All right, I got 7 o'clock. Susan, you ready? All right, let's stand and Reverend Moss, you give an invocation for us.
Let us pray. Father and God, we thank you for this day. God, we thank you for this council meeting. As we come together, God, we pray that you be in the midst. We pray that you lead us by your spirit and help us to make sound, good decisions for our town, to better the residents as well as for the future growth. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Thank you. We have with us representative with South Carolina Department of Transportation, Mr. Joel Smith, and he's going to share some information with us, and we appreciate your time, sir. If you'd like to join us and share with us what you guys share with us, sir.
Yes, sir. So thank you, Mayor and council members, for having me. I'm here to kind of talk with y'all and answer any questions you've got about the intersection of 93 and Pepper, associated with kind of the railroad underpass. Working with Tom and some others here at the town, talking through some kind of ideas and solutions for that area. We've talked about as it relates to the traffic with the ball field, just kind of the issues with the limitations of the underpass and the railroad and everything like that. Just kind of running through some ideas as to how we can make that intersection better, how the town can, potentially fund some kind of intersection improvement project or whatever. So kind of the ideas that we talked about were, and I guess from kind of order of easiest, so to speak, all the way to most intensive and expensive, would be kind of option A would be to make it a right in, right out, and what that would be limiting the left turn movement out from the underpass and in from the underpass. Kind of the reasoning behind that would be to limit the potential for accidents and conflicts with the way Pepper Street comes in. It's kind of at an offset. Those intersections don't really line up, perfectly. That would be something that would be relatively simple to do. Kind of beyond that, doing a signal, but a signal would include needing left turn lanes off of 93 onto Pepper, both sides, towards the ball fields and then towards the underpass as well. That would require doing some significant modifications to the roadway, to the curb and gutter, the sidewalk. We have basically an easement right of way for 93. The railroad technically owns the land still. So we would want to kind of, if there was a project ever developed, we would move kind of towards the ball field. So it would require some probably removal and relocation of the existing sidewalk and some of the trees and things that kind of buffer the ball fields. So that would need to go through some kind of a design process and an actual construction project. And then kind of the last option would be basically a roundabout. That would obviously be the most expensive, would be a couple $1 million, and would be the most difficult. Quite frankly, with the railroad being so close, I don't know if it's even physically possible, but it's always an option. So, like I said, we've kind of worked with members here at the town to kind of discuss those options and give some feedback. The right in, right out, like I said, that's actually something that the DOT could do with our forces. It's relatively simple and would just kind of be some signage and pavement markings and things like that. But the signal project, so like Plan B, I guess, would be something that the town, potentially CTC, Pickens County, maybe some grants or something like that y'all would have to kind of spearhead. The intersection does not technically meet signal warrants. We've looked at it, but because it is in a downtown network, it is a location that could potentially have a signal. If you're familiar with when you travel through Liberty there at 178 and 93, there's a signal, and then I can't remember what the next street over is, but there immediately after is another signal. So it would work similar to that. So it's not uncommon in small towns that we've got, signals kind of back to back. So anyway, that's kind of how we've landed on these options, and I'll just kind of open it up if y'all have any questions of me. Yes, sir.
The roundabout, you said would be about 2 million.
Probably, right now, we're probably looking at the last estimates I've seen on roundabouts for that area would be about probably 2.2 to 2.3 realistically.
And signal with the
Turn lanes. So a signal itself right now is running at about 250,000, and then if you include the turn lanes, sidewalks, drainage, all that kind of stuff, you're probably looking at around $1 million, or maybe just under $1 million for that type of a project. And that would also include your design and engineering and all that kind of stuff as well. So about probably less than half the cost of a roundabout.
And right in, right out, how much would that cost?
Well, like I said, if we did that kind of just from a signage and pavement marking standpoint, the DOT could do that. So it would be no cost to the town.
To the town.
Yeah, we talked about, so when you do the right in, right out, we normally would start with just the pavement markings where we would create, we call them pork chops, kind of the wedge triangle thing. We would paint that, and it would be kind of in a temporary condition. And then in the future, if that was something that the town, saw as a very, a big benefit, we could eventually turn that into concrete to make it more permanent. But again, those are, kind of things that the DOT can assist with, so.
And the signal, because we're asking to start 25 miles an hour at Wesleyan Drive,
Yes.
that helps people get it slowed down before they get to the signal.
Exactly.
Is that right?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
And so that's why that hasn't been an option for us, or we didn't know that was an option beforehand.
So it's kind of twofold. The signals being that close together, that's correct. They don't operate as well unless you reduce the speeds way down to like 25. But also, like I said, I think previous to within the last maybe 3, 4, 5 years when we originally studied it, the signal wasn't warranted. But then now that we've kind of had more discussions about lowering the speed limit and then the town potentially paying for it, then that's kind of when the signal was brought back into the discussion. It's not something, because it doesn't meet warrants, it's not something that the DOT could fund, I guess is a better way to answer that.
And the underpass belongs to the railroad.
That's correct. Yes, sir. Yeah, I reached out to our railroad office in Columbia after we did a little bit of research, and it was determined that yes, Norfolk Southern owns the structure itself.
And if I'm just trying to think of all. I'll be quiet in a minute. But let's say the railroad decided that they could carry heavier weight and longer trains, and they decided that overpass was, or underpass, however you want to, underpass for cars, or that it wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
Then they could just block it up, right?
I don't want to speak for Norfolk Southern, but yes, if they found that, typically speaking, if something like that is found to be structurally deficient, especially if they're going to carry heavier loads, then I don't see why they wouldn't take it upon themselves to just close it and not rebuild a structure for the underpass.
So there's a possibility we could spend $1 million, and a couple of years later they could say this is not safe and close that.
Yeah, I suppose it is absolutely possible.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Could I ask a question? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
When you mentioned the right in, right out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you explain that a little bit more in depth? Right in, right out, what exactly does that mean?
So if you're coming from Liberty down 93 and you come to that intersection, you would still be able to make a left on Pepper to go to the ball fields. We're not talking about touching that side. But you'd only be able to make a right in to the underpass to go over to the other parallel street on the north side of the railroad tracks. If you were coming from Liberty, you'd only be able to make a right in. If you were coming from the Clemson side and you were coming down 93, you would not be able to access under that underpass at all. You would either have to go to the at-grade crossing closer to the Mexican restaurant around the curve, or you'd have to go, way, way, way down. But you would not be able to make a left into that. And then if you're coming from the north side of Central and you go under the railroad tracks and you come to the intersection with 93, you'd only be able to make a right out. You would not be able to make a left out. So if you were wanting to head towards Greenville, you'd have to make a right, go down to the signal, and just kind of go around the block and then go back around.
Okay, I did not realize that if you were coming from Clemson, that you would not be able to turn under the underpass. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, didn't
Now,
realize
I say that, we could potentially look at what's called a 2/3 pork chop, and we could look at the left end. However, that's not something that we discussed previously, only because kind of the idea behind the right in, right out was to try to help reduce the accidents at that intersection. And by adding the left turn, anytime you incorporate left turning movements to an intersection, it always increases the chances for accidents. So that's why we didn't look at that potential movement. So,
Do you have any data on how many accidents have been at that intersection there at the underpass? I don't know if you've had access to that or not.
so we've, I believe, the town's police department gave us that information, and we do have that. But I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I can't tell you if it's like 5 a year or
Three.
it's
Three.
3.
in the
3 in 2 years.
3 in how many?
In 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so,
correct, yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so realistically, for the amount of traffic on 93 at that intersection, it's not a lot of accidents.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Who else has a question?
I don't have so much questions as I do saying it won't work. The way you told us, this will not work because of the railroad. And the reason, a lot of times they stop all 3 crossings. So we people that live on the other side, which used to be the good side of town years ago, is now the bad side of town. And most of the people here are living over there now, and I've been over there for 65 years altogether. And it's got, you can't put a no left, or you can't put a no left coming either way. You got to have the 2 lefts. If it takes a red light, or just a caution light, or whatever, or just a tripping the switch of turning it red or turning it orange or green or whatever, but we can't do it with a railroad. And the railroad underpass is over 100 years old, and this liable to collapse any time, and the railroad company will not spend a nickel on it because that's the way they operate now. They don't give a rip about whether we can get anywhere or not. And that's where we stand, especially the people that live on the wrong side of Main Street. And that's where most of the people in here are in that group with me. And I don't like it. There's nothing we can do except a red light or a caution light. And far as turning left and turning and passing on the right when somebody's turning left, I have been at close to a line before, and I had people that have room to pass me on the right. So we shouldn't have to get the standards like 100, well, not 100, but 20, 30 more feet when the car or truck can pass you like within about 10 more feet, just the sidewalk there. And it's possible to do it a whole lot cheaper than 250,000 plus. We can do it for 50,000 or less, I think. If you can't, I think we can put it up ourselves somehow. I do, because it's just ridiculous to spend that much money when the road is wide there already. Like I said, I've been turning left and I've had people pass me on the right. Now then, to standardize it, you may have to get in the ballpark, but to make it get by with it, just take the sidewalk right there and make just a little narrow 5-foot strip will take care of us going around, having a left-hand turn lane.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does DOT have any voice if the railroad decides to close the underpass? Do they have any voice with the railroad?
No, unfortunately, we
No,
don't.
they control everything.
Yeah, they tell us when they're gonna close our roads, so.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So, anybody else got a question?
I wondered if you had looked at the red light and that intersection combined with all the traffic there as well as on Gaines Street at the next intersection. If you had thought about how all of those connect and if there were any other options that DOT had thought of.
So, we talked about potentially doing some kind of like a one-way type downtown project, meaning all y'all's roads, and correct me if I'm wrong, are all just two-way streets. There is the potential, the city of Simpsonville is doing a similar project with their downtown, if you're familiar with it, where we could look at potentially doing some kind of a one-way design. We kind of talked about it at a very high level. I think the problem that we kind of ran into that we didn't really pursue it a whole lot further is the potential for truck traffic. 93 is a primary, state route, and y'all do get trucks through here. So if we did some kind of a one-way project, we'd have to figure out, okay, if 93 is not going to be two ways anymore, where does that 18-wheeler go, and how does it make certain turns? And y'all don't have a lot of parallel network roads, and a lot of your side roads are very narrow. So in theory, it's possible, but I think once you really started digging into a project like that, you're talking about improving intersections that just start kind of creeping up. And whereas if we were talking about, Pepper with a signal and doing some, intersection improvements just at one intersection, if we try to do some kind of a one-way network, just due to the truck traffic, I think you'd start looking at improving probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 intersections just in order to make the truck turning movements work. So,
Our elementary school is on the other side of the railroad tracks, so they have to cross over at the post office.
right.
And then go all the way down and then they have to go out through basically Liberty, or go back to the post office. Okay, that's all I have.
And sometimes all 3 crossings are blocked by the train, a lot of times.
So
They're
when you,
not supposed to do that.
I know they're not supposed to, but they do what the heck they want to.
so the one-way option, did you determine which way would be one way?
We looked at, and again, I'm sorry, what's
That's
the parallel street to the south of Gaines? Yeah, so, and over by the CrossFit and the little farmer's market that just kind of opened up. So we talked about potentially making that, everybody turns right and then comes down, and that would be eastbound on Gaines to Church, and then make a left on Church and then back a right on 93, and kind of make that the one way. But again, you're talking about, can we physically make that kind of jug handle movement with trucks, and I think it'd be tough.
Yep. You guys took most of my questions. Thank you. Tell me why a stop sign wouldn't work. Is that because DOT wouldn't allow that, or?
No, if we do a 4-way stop, what it'll do is it'll back up to the existing signal at Church. So the only reason the signal works is because they would need to be coordinated. So basically, once 93 goes green, both of those would be green simultaneously. Yeah, if we just do a 4-way stop, especially without turn lanes and a signal, what that does is it'll potentially back up into the signal at Church, and then you've created more problems.
So let's say tomorrow morning we came to you and said, here's $1.5 million to put our traffic light in. How long will we take before you put that traffic light in?
So, design, permitting, probably 2 years before it's open. If tomorrow you said, here's the money. Yeah.
So this, Ms. Bowers asked some of this question too. Is there any other thing that we haven't thought of? any other option, even, I'm not holding you to it, but
Yeah.
any idea that you might have that we haven't considered, haven't thought of?
What about a roundabout at the traffic lights instead of traffic lights?
So putting a roundabout at church where the existing is?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's possible. I think the challenge would be, do we get into the railroad side? A roundabout typically has to be about 120 feet in diameter in order for trucks to make it around it. I've not dropped a circle, just on Google Earth to see if it even fits. But my worry would be, number one, you'd potentially get into railroad, which their permitting is a nightmare. And then you'd potentially kind of eat into y'all's streetscape and sidewalks and things on Church Street. So there'd be a potential negative impact there as well, which is kind of why we looked at it at Pepper, but I don't know if it's practical at Pepper either. Downtown configurations like Central, Liberty, Pickens, easily downtown roundabouts are kind of big for a downtown type setting. Not saying that it's impossible, but it could potentially have like negative impacts to the adjacent businesses, and you get into potentially purchasing right of way from people you don't want to have to purchase right of way from. So, yeah.
Any other questions? That's all I have.
I think it's a stupid question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
There's no stupid questions.
Okay, so if we said tomorrow, we have our $1 million, and it's gonna take you 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we know you're not gonna break ground or start the engineering drawings tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
we would have to give you our $1 million tomorrow when we said we're ready to do it?
So the way this project could potentially work, and if we're still talking about the signal and turn lanes and things, so the project would need to be spearheaded by the town.
Mm-hmm.
We would certainly help you all out by kind of doing preliminary sketches and come up with kind of a signal plan and things that my staff can do in-house, that would definitely give y'all the, okay, this is actually feasible. Like, this really is going to work. We've put pen to paper because all we've been doing now is kind of talking about stuff and drawing some lines on Google. So we would certainly help y'all with that. But then once we get kind of beyond that, okay, preliminarily we know that it can physically fit. There's not going to be any major hangups or whatever. Then the town would have to hire a consultant or an engineer to finish the design, come up with actual civil drawings that they could hand to a contractor, and then the town, or potentially Pickens CTC or maybe ACOG or some other entity, could then potentially champion the actual construction project as well. So that's kind of why unfortunately, because it wouldn't be a DOT project, it wouldn't be quite turnkey, so to speak. But I'll be honest with you, with as slow as our projects are going right now, I actually think that y'all could probably do a project faster than we could if it was a DOT project. I mean, I hate to admit that, but our projects potentially can be 4 to 6 years out just because of all of our processes that we have to go through. So
You've got one of our projects that's 5 years out,
there you
and
go.
you're already holding our money. That's why I asked.
Gotcha.
And so it solely would be our project simply because of the traffic light at church, because of the close proximity.
So because it involves turn lanes, roadway improvements, and because the signal is not warranted based on a warrant study, DOT could not assist with the funding. That's correct. That's why.
What would cause it to be warranted?
If there were considerably more traffic accidents, then it would get put into a list statewide, and then our safety office in Columbia would review it and determine if funding was available. But unfortunately, with 3 accidents in 2 years, I can tell you it would be way down on a list statewide. So.
for me to think that we're the only town that has had this problem,
Correct.
but there must be other towns that have had this problem.
Yes.
What kind of solutions have they come up with?
Similar things. Traffic signals, turn lanes, restricting access, which would be the right in, right out option. Yeah, it's, we always, we try to think outside the box, and we look at things like the kind of the one-way, circulation and things like that. But again, when it kind of comes to older, established historical downtowns, it's hard to, kind of come up with a silver bullet, so to speak. It's not like we're talking about a new roadway across a pasture where there's not impacts. We've done small projects like this with Travelers Rest. We've done small projects with Clemson. Let's see, I'm trying to think other ones recently we've done. Fountain Inn. Again, I said the Simpsonville project. We've been working on their whole one-way streets kind of network. We've been working on that for about 1.5 years with them now, and they've just now gone to design and permitting with that project. So yeah, it's we do this quite a bit, with the towns across our district, which are the 4 upstate counties. But like I said, unfortunately, just kind of due to the constraints of a built out downtown, it's difficult to not go with kind of the tried and true turn lanes and signal kind of method.
How about just turn lanes without a signal?
So turn lanes without a signal, the problem with that is that it creates that potential. Right now you've got 2 lanes, so you've only got 2 cars that have to look at each other and make a decision, and hopefully they're both using their blinkers if they're choosing to turn.
Probably not, but-
That's asking
Right,
too much.
exactly. So, but if we did the turn lanes, if we did the straights, and then we also put in turn lanes, but we didn't do a signal, you've now created 2 more conflicts that you didn't have. And you're not really addressing the issue, which
Right.
is,
Probably gonna make it worse,
it's possible. It absolutely could
because you're
make
gonna
it
have
worse.
more cars you have to look at before you can make a decision.
Exactly, yeah.
I was just thinking cost-wise, maybe just the turn lanes would help alleviate it.
Typically, we don't like to add turn lanes on primary routes without a signal at a 4-way intersection. If it was a T intersection, you can do it because you're only talking about the one movement.
Right.
But because there's and because they're offset, which makes it kind of even worse. So.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. Anything else, council?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it.
very
Thank you all. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is reading of the regular meeting minutes from July the 10th, 2023, and public hearing on July 26th, 2023. Those are in your packets. We've had a chance to review those, and I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the reading of regular meeting minutes of 7/10/2023, and, can I do both? And the public hearing minutes of 7/26/2023.
Second.
Motion on the table is to approve reading of regular meeting minutes 7/10/2023 and public hearing minutes 7/26/2023. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. Unanimous, thank you. Next item on the agenda is public session for 30 minutes total. Just want to make a point of order here and point out that this is an opportunity to hear from our citizens, and it's not an opportunity for dialogue. If we would like dialogue, we are all very, very happy to speak with folks after the meeting or by email or phone call or something like that. This is just our opportunity to listen. So we'll take that opportunity now. Mr. Thompson. Mayor, good evening.
You folks are probably tired of hearing from me, but I'm going to talk a little bit anyway
Yes, sir.
about this subject that you've just been discussing and inquiring about. I may not be understanding the whole picture here. When I first heard about this, I assumed that the issue was with school traffic. I know it gets a little congested around the underpass when school lets out, and probably stays congested for 10 minutes, maybe 15. I live right across from the elementary school, and I see all the cars lined up there, and I have enough sense to stay home when school's being let out, and not try to go to Poncho's or Walmart or anywhere on this side of town. But anyway, if this becomes an ordinance, if we're not allowed to turn left off of Gaines into the underpass, I think about 99% of the folks that live in the northeast quadrant of Central are going to be highly upset. And not just upset, they're going to be angry. The next time the train gets parked on the tracks and is left there for 2 or 3 or 4 days, you're really going to have a mess on your hands if folks can't turn left and go through the underpass. Even without the train being parked on the tracks, if you don't allow a left turn, you're going to force a whole lot more traffic to the at-grade crossings. And that in itself creates a danger. It would seem to me that there might be some other things that could be done, short of telling all us folks that live over there close to the school, oh, you can't come down this road and turn left. If that train's parked there on the tracks, then if we're trying to get to Poncho's, we'd have to go to Clemson and come back into Central, or go to Norris and come down on 93. If the ambulance has to come to my house in the middle of the night and I tell them I want to go to ANMED, and they can't turn left and go through the underpass, and the train's parked on the tracks, I'll probably be dead before they get to Anderson. You might consider these possibilities. Maybe the DOT could adjust the light a little bit there at Church Street and hold traffic a little longer on Main to give folks going through the underpass a little more time to get out onto 93. And or you might consider having a police officer down at the underpass directing traffic. I'm assuming at the academy in Columbia they still teach traffic directing and whistleblowing. You could consider working with the school folks and trying to get them to encourage parents to let the kids ride the school bus. I see a lot of school buses in town with looks like 2, 3, 4 children on them. That's terrible. If kids would ride the bus, that would eliminate a lot of the traffic at the underpass. I just think there's things you could do other than going to the extreme of outlawing left-hand turns for a large percentage of the town's population. So I hope that you won't be in a rush to make a decision to ban left-hand turns. There are a lot of traffic regulations that already exist that aren't observed. I travel down Gaines Street at least 6 days a week, and hardly a day goes by that I don't see somebody or bodies running stop signs. not even slowing down for them, just going right past them. There's hardly a time I go down Madden Bridge Road and try to observe the speed limit that I don't get tailgated. But I very seldom see a central police car on the roads. I couldn't tell you the last time I saw one that had somebody stopped. I guess I just wasn't in the right place at the right time. But please think this through at length. Don't rush, and just realize if you ban left-hand turns at the underpass, there's going to be a great deal of discontent stirred up with you folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. So that's the only name I've got on my list. We will move to, next item on the agenda is receipt and disposition of petitions. Any new business here?
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Reports from council committees. Planning, Ms. Bowers, please.
Planning was supposed to meet tomorrow night, and we had nothing on our agenda, so we will meet in September.
Anything further?
That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Streets and Public Safety, Mr. Moss, sir.
Yes, I make a motion that we authorize the fire chief to apply for a FEMA grant that will fully fund the 3 full-time firefighters, and the town will be responsible for the salaries after the 3 years.
Second.
Motion on the table is to authorize the fire chief to apply for a FEMA grant to fully fund 3 full-time firefighters for a period of 3 years, after which the town will be responsible to continue salaries and benefits after 3 years. Any discussion?
Where will the funding come from that?
FEMA. Any further discussion or questions?
I'm talking about after the 3 years.
We would be on the hook for that.
Okay, and about how much would that run roughly, you think?
I don't think we ever came on to an actual number. We had discussed $250,000. Does that sound right, Mr. Michigan? $250,000, ballpark. Until we see the grant and know what they're asking for and the amount that they're funding, that number might change a little bit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. Anything further?
And that's it, Mayor.
All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Moss?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Finance and marketing, Ms. Chapman.
I'm sure you've had a chance to look at your monthly financial report. General fund is actually, not as good as it has been. It could be worse, but it's, in a minute, I will defer to Mr. Mishu because he can explain that, more eloquently than I can. Looking at the water fund, our balance is in the negative $4,786. That's, we many times have seen that to be, at zero or we have funds in there. So I'm sure Mr. Mishu has some explanation for that. Our sewer and our sanitation revenue are good. So we just need to be concerned right now with our general fund and our water fund. And I'll defer to Mr. Mishu to take the floor and explain the fund balances there, the negative.
The fund balance in general fund, we get a lot of bi-yearly bills starting July 1, so we paid a lot of bi-yearly bills this month. So that's why you're just slightly in the red with general fund. Water, we just had some repairs that had to be done, and that caused us to dip into the water revenue. You also have to remember that this is August, so the kids still haven't come back yet. So your they're not using as much water. I don't know, with the rain, you don't have people watering grass either. So the water usage is down.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything further from you?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Recreation, Mr. Deal, sir.
Yes, sir. Just a couple of things I'd like to point out. Bullock walking track, the resurfacing of that project has been completed, and it's great. If you haven't had a chance to go there and walk it and see it, it's significant improvement. The project was funded completely by a private donation and then matching funds from Pickens County Recreation Fund. So a great asset to the town, and we're thankful for that. The Central Tigers Super Saturday will take place August 26th. On that Saturday, there'll be 4 games starting at 10 a.m. And it's $5 for adults and $3 for children. I encourage you, if you can, to come out and cheer on all the people that are participating in that. That's all I have this time.
Thank you, sir. Enterprise, Mr. Holliday, sir.
Yes, sir. For the month of July, the Water and Sewer Department completed 284 work orders, which was almost twice as much as June. And I guess June is a lot of vacation time, probably the reason it wasn't as much, but they really worked. I don't know of any month right off that they've had that many work orders before. They also had 40 on the water checks and cutoffs. They have had 43 disconnects for the month, but 40 of them were reconnected, which means a little work both ways. And the sanitation department, both residential and commercial, operated on normal schedules for the month of July. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Tourism and economic development. Catherine, can I put you on the spot and ask you just to outline some things that are going on this over the summer and coming into the fall? Is that? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I can't. Yeah, we have our concert coming up October 21st. That'll be the Trick or Treat on Me event. We have News Channel 7 coming on September 1st from 5 a.m. to I think 10 a.m. To broadcast live here. We have the police fundraising event. October 14th. I'm confused for my. And Homecoming Parade will be Wednesday, September 27th on Main Street.
Very good. Thank you for being flexible. I would like to make a motion that we authorize the administrator to enter into a contract with Samantha Wood for improvements of the website to be funded by the remaining funds allocated for the depot renovations. Some money left over there in the amount of a one-time fee of $2,500, in addition to 2 to 4 hours weekly in the amount of $5,200 per year. And that's a motion.
I second that.
Motion on the table is to authorize the administrator to enter into a contract for Samantha Wood with Samantha Wood for improvements to the website, funded by funds allocated for the depot leftover, and the amount of a one-time fee of $2,500 in addition to 2 to 4 hours weekly for the amount of $5,200 annually. That's the motion. Any discussion?
Do we have to say that it's coming from ARPA funds?
I'm sorry.
Do we have to say that it's coming from ARPA funds?
Yes.
I will make an amended motion to authorize the administrator to enter into a contract with Samantha Wood for improvements to the website to be funded by remaining funds allocated for the depot renovations that came from the ARPA grant in the amount of a one-time fee of $2,500, in addition 2 to 4 hours weekly for the amount of $5,200 annually.
Second.
Amended motion on the table is to authorize the administrator to enter into a contract with Samantha Wood for improvements to the website to be funded by the remaining funds allocated for depot renovations that was originally funded by the ARPA grant in the amount of a one-time fee of $2,500, in addition 2 to 4 hours weekly in the amount of $5,200 per year. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Any new business to discuss tonight? How about old business? Hearing none, we'll move to introduction and consideration of new ordinances, policies, proclamation, and resolutions. First on the agenda is Resolution 814-2023, Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And I will entertain a motion on that resolution.
I move that we approve Resolution 814-2023, Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second.
Motion on the table is to approve Resolution 814-2023, Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. It's unanimous, thank you. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 9/11/2023. This is a rezoning of a piece of property, Pickens County Tax Map 406509055768, Pickens County Tax Map 4012958577 from R20 to Ag, and I'll entertain a motion to that effect. Do I have a motion? Hearing none. I will move to consideration of ordinances and policies already in possession of council. We have second reading of policy 8/14/2023 zoning compliance fees. I move that we approve on second reading policy 8/14/2023 zoning compliance fees.
Second.
Motion on the table is to approve on second reading policy 8/14/2023 zoning compliance fees. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand, please. And that's unanimous, thank you. Next item on the agenda is second reading of ordinance 8/14/2023 speed limits.
I make a motion that we adopt on second reading of ordinance 08/14/2023 speed limit.
Second.
Motion on the table is to adopt on second reading an ordinance ordinance 8/14/2023 speed limit. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand, please. And that's unanimous, thank you. Next item, second reading of ordinance 8/14/2023 amendment to Code of Ordinance, section 12-6.
I move that we adopt on second reading ordinance 8/14/2023 amendment to Code of Ordinance, section 12-6.
I'll second that. Motion on the table is to approve, to adopt on second reading ordinance 8/14/2023 amendment to Code of Ordinance, section 12-6. Any discussion? All those in favor raise your right hand, please. Those opposed?
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
I need to change my vote.
Okay,
My vote is nay.
got that. Next item on the agenda is second reading of policy 8/14/2023 amendment to base rates.
I move that we adopt on second reading policy 6/14/2023 amendment to base rates.
Did you mean 8?
8, yes. 14/2023 amendment to base rates.
Second that.
Motion on the table is to adopt on second reading policy 8/14/2023 amendment to base rates. Any discussion? All those in favor raise your right hand, please. Thank you. Next item, second reading of ordinance 8/14/2023 amendment to ordinance 6/12/2023 BU sewer rates.
I move that we adopt on second reading ordinance 8/14/2023 amendment to ordinance 6/12/2023 BU sewer rates.
Second.
Motion on the table is to adopt on second reading ordinance 8/14/2023 amendment to ordinance 6/12/2023 BU sewer rates. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
we're doing this because after we set our policy, then they came back to us and told us that they were raising sewer rates, so we're having to match that. It's just a pass-through, is that correct?
That's my understanding, sir.
Okay.
Any correction on that, sir?
No correction, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand, please. We are unanimous, thank you. Reports from Administrator and Mayor. Mr. Administrator, sir, what you got for us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Y'all had, Council had asked me to check on the cost of a traffic study concerning the underpass in Pepper Street and all of that. I did reach out to Eric Dillon, who used to work for DOT. So the estimate he gave me was somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000. So we'll discuss it at the September work session. I don't really see a big hurry in making a decision, but just want to pass that information along as I got it.
Thank you.
Church Street Waterline project is continuing along at a steady pace. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to be boring under Highway 93, under the railroad tracks, right there at the Hachi parking lot, the parking lot that we own that's by Hachi's. So you've probably seen that equipment out there and probably wondered what it was. It's a boring machine. So when they get there, they'll be boring under there, and I think that'll take probably about a week once they start the boring process. They have connected part of that line going down Church Street, close to the Abercrombie place, closer there. I'm not sure the Abercrombie house is connected yet, but it's close to that. So as they complete it, get it tested by DHEC, they're getting a permit to connect. So they should be completely finished with the project, with the sidewalks being repoured, Church Street Road being repaved, and on into up to Amanda Court, completely done by February. So it's a long process. The easy part is putting the water line in. The hard part and the expensive part is putting it back the way they found it. So that's where your expense is in this project and in most projects, is putting things back the way they found them. So and on another note, I didn't have this listed. The walking track behind the rec center, I did sign a contract this morning for that project to go. That's the walking trail from Commons Way over to Spring Forest, down our sewer right-of-way. They say they'll have that done within 120 days. So figure that up to be somewhere around December. So that's exciting. That's going to be a nice little trail to walk down. Any questions from council?
Just want to get on the record that they're going to repave Church Street. I've got a few phone calls, so
Yes.
thank you, sir.
They will go back. They temporarily put the asphalt in there. They're going to wait till they're close to done, because anytime you disturb the earth, I think Joe will tell you, the best way to pack it is to have people drive over it. Because if you permanently repave it too soon, then the road sinks and you got to go back and do it again. So they've got that temporary, but they're going to go up to where they dug, where they began, where they ended on Church Street, and they'll redo that entire section, is my understanding.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Are they going to continue leaving water running on the weekends?
Yes, they do that before they connect. They keep the water trickling through, like you see, kind of like a little hose pipe in your yard, so that the water doesn't get contaminated by sitting there. If it's sitting water, then it starts to get algae buildup and all that. So they have to keep water flowing through it until they get it connected. So yes, you'll continue to see that throughout the whole project, and that's why they're doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank everybody for coming out tonight to, I'm sure, share their thoughts and views on Pepper Street, and just appreciate everybody's feedback, and just would ask that everybody, we educate ourselves and know what the plans are in place. He's not here, but I appreciate Mr. Smith coming tonight and sharing his thoughts and just helping us understand things. None of us are traffic engineers. Well, maybe Joe Moss is. But I'm a layman, so I appreciate that. I move pursuant to South Carolina Code of Laws, Section 30-4-70A1, Legal Issues, Section 30-4-70A2, that we go into executive session to discuss a personnel issue.
Second that.
Motion on the table is to go into executive session to discuss a personnel issue. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. Thank you. We're in recess for executive session. Thank you. Mayor Thompson.